Okay, recording is started. Well, seeing as there is no chair or vice chair since this is election day, I get to bring the call to order forth, calling this tab meeting on May 24th, 2023 to order. It is 6:05, having a little bit of a late start. We acknowledge that there is a quorum present. 6, including Julian online. Right now we have a few absentees. We have Jerry Bernstein, who's excused. I'm here. Dave Wagner here, who's excused. We also have our newest addition, our current alternate, Amy McLeod, who was going to be filling in for our 2027 vacancy we had and then dropped out this week. So you were going to fill in for him anyways. So that. Guess I get to take the role of everything. So Cynthia, are you here?
I'm here.
Amy, Micah, Erica, Tom, and last but not least, Julian. Great. Okay. First, get the approval of the minutes of April 26, 2023. I believe I get to do it all in favor. Is that how that works?
There's a couple ways to do it, but that's one valid way to do it.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes for April 26th?
I guess there's
Do we have a
technically,
motion?
technically, someone has to make a motion.
Oh, okay.
And you could say I would entertain a motion.
I would entertain a motion. Yeah.
I second that.
Great. All
Are
in
you?
favor?
I already motioned. I did first.
Yeah, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Nobody. Great, minutes are approved. Moving into the public comment period, seeing as there is no member of the public here or online, I can consider that closed. And we can move on to regular business. First of which is the chair and vice chair nomination and election process for 2023, 2024. So the way this works is I, as the staff member, staff liaison, will first call for nominations. When all nominations have been made, I will close the nominations. If only one nomination is made, the member is considered elected to the position by unanimous consent. If multiple nominations are made, board members are provided an opportunity to discuss the nominees. I will then ask board members to cast votes on the nominees in the order that they are nominated by roll call vote. Board members may vote only for one nominee per office and may vote for themselves. First board member receiving majority vote is declared the chair. And we'll do the same thing for vice chair. So, are there any nominations for chair?
I nominate Cynthia. I know you've done it a couple of years, but appreciated that you seem to consider everyone's opinion and try and keep us on time and on topic. And really, especially on that first point, I noticed you make sure we come back to people, check in with everyone, make sure everyone's heard. And I think of the role of the chair on a community board. I think that's the most important part.
Thank you.
Are there any other nominations?
For chair or for vote? Is this
For chair, just for chair. Hearing none, the nominations are closed. Cynthia, you've been elected the chair through May 2024 up until the May 2024 tab meeting. Congratulations. That's congratulations.
I make a super brief comment.
You may.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm very happy to serve another year. There's a transition this year with our very capable staffs still being relatively new in these roles. So I'm very happy to do this. I do think that rotation of leadership is important. So I do want to encourage people to be thinking about who would maybe want to be chair a year from now. Because I think it'll be just appropriate for me to let somebody else do that. And thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Great. All right, let's move on to vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Julian.
Are there any other nominations? Julian, online. You've been elected vice chair through up until the May tab in 2024. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks for nominating him for another term.
Great. Okay. Well, we are.
Can I just say something? Sorry. It was nice of you to say why you nominated. I just want to say that I think Julian and I make a really good team. He stays really on top of all the business of the city. I am very kind of organizationally oriented, and I think that we make a really good team. And he has always a lot of good thoughts, and people don't always see what the vice chair is doing, but we talk, you know, between meetings, and he always has a lot to add. And so thank you, Julian. I think we make a great team, and I'm happy to do it with you for another year. Thanks.
Well, I can let you take over
All right.
as chair.
Yay, now I'm chair. Right up, I get to do the important job of introducing item 4A. No, I'm sorry, item 4B, which is the transit study. And we have Thomas online, I believe. So I will turn it over to you, Thomas. I don't have any introductory comments. Unless anyone else wanted to say anything before we turn over to Thomas.
I have a question.
Mhm.
This is the first time I've met Patty,
Oh,
so I don't know.
I don't
It
think,
was your fire meeting, but this is your first meeting, and maybe an introduction around, so get to know. Patty, a little bit of background, and just a brief intro.
I think it's a grand idea. So Thomas, maybe hold off one sec. And I don't know what the proper way to do that is, but I think it's a great idea, and I think we should just wing it for a second.
Is
if that's okay.
Only one new member to the board?
We did have another, but he declined and at this week, I believe, unfortunately.
Yeah, Wednesday.
Unfortunately. And we didn't have a youth applicant. So even though we had an alternate in Hanning, we didn't have couldn't fill that with anyone but a youth. It's not, could be, it shall be under a certain age. It's actually fairly clearly defined. So anyway, maybe Tom, we could just start with you and just say how long you've been serving and introduce yourself, and maybe say 10 seconds about why you like serving on this board or your relationship to Issaquah, maybe.
Okay, well, I've been a resident, I'm Tom McDonald, been a resident of Issaquah since '92. Been on the transportation advisory board since I think it started. But I think it's 2017 or 18. So, and my background is I'm a transportation engineer for consultant engineering, public agencies, lastly, South Transit. And live here in Squawk Mountain. Kids are raised here. I bike, my scooter, walk, my bus to work. Very engaged with backlog, codes, and infrastructure for the city, and glad to provide some technical side in the input I can. Transportation committee.
I'm Erica. I've been on tab since 2020. Not totally sure if that was summer, fall, but we were all virtual back then. So I've lived in Issaquah since 2020, but I've worked for state representatives and then the county council that represents this area in some capacity for the next since 2019. And so my first boss that I worked for, Ramos, he was at one point vice chair of the transportation committee. He's still on it. And so that kind of sparked my interest in this. I try and bring a perspective of what's going on at the state level. I work for a different state representative, Lisa Callan, in the other seat now. She's not on transportation, but I still try and stay connected to this. I live in the Highlands. It's a very walkable area, but we have our own challenges. It's really interesting reading about the area that I live in. So, yeah. Oh, I grew up North Bellingham, really rural area. I didn't ride a bus until I moved to King County. And so, yeah, I bring perspective.
I'm Mike Issaquah. I'm the engineering manager at Boeing, one and only Boeing, was one of the company. So I joined 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, something like that, something kind of, well, we were still meeting virtually then. So it was during still COVID-ish times. I think for me, what I bring to the board is I like to at least think I try and be the voice that questions as needed. I think a lot of people on the board are big bicyclists, which is awesome, but I don't do too well on a bike. So I try and make sure I'm here representing, the primary mode of transportation, at least as of today in Issaquah.
I'm Hani Maklad. I'm a civil engineer with 20 years of experience. I was born and lived in Egypt, and I had my whole professional life in the Middle East between Dubai and Doha, Qatar. Worked on some major projects there in construction, and then decided to move with my family a few months ago to Seattle. So I live in the Highland. I have a son who's in high school and a daughter who's in elementary school. And I'm in love with Issaquah. I feel I can be beneficial to the community, so I decided to be helpful. Yeah.
So we met before,
Yeah.
and I'm Cynthia Kress, and I'm now the chair. And I have been living in Issaquah for 8 years, but I lived in the surrounding area for the 20 years before that, before we were unincorporated Issaquah and then became Sammamish. And I have not practiced in the field professionally in transportation, but I do have a master of urban planning with an emphasis on transportation infrastructure. And the third thing is the emphasis, but transportation and infrastructure and land use. And I've been on the board with Tom since it started. And we're really glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for suggesting that. It does feel a little weird that there's not an intro part of this that's formal. Oh, sorry, Julian, and I'm sorry. People need to help me. I always forget the online people. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Julian?
Sure. Julian Midlow. I've been on the Transportation Advisory Board since 2021, and I became vice chair last year and just now reappointed, obviously. Really have been passionate about transportation for a while and its conjunction with housing, particularly since I'm an avid, a really active cyclist in the area and enjoy taking transit all around the region for various responsibilities. And so that's kind of what I like to bring to the tab. Just that lived experience of being a consistent transit and cyclist. Thank you.
Thanks, Julian. Okay, with that, I think we will go ahead and move along. I appreciate that. That's good. Also learned a few things that I didn't know. I didn't know you from rural Bellingham.
Oh, Linda?
Oh, yeah, I know where Linden is. Yeah.
There are buses up there, just they were very frequent.
Okay, Thomas, you ready? We cannot hear you.
I am ready. Thank you. And yeah, congrats to the new chair, vice chair, and the new member. Thanks for being here today. So yeah, my name is Thomas Valdrez. I'm the city's senior transportation planner. And tonight I'm excited to receive your feedback on the transit studies gaps analysis. And so to begin, I'll just briefly provide some background information on the existing transit network, what it looks like today, what we can reasonably expect in the future. And then I'll walk through some of the deficiencies that we've identified as part of our analysis. And we'll go ahead and ask for your feedback as we go through that. So jumping right in here, in the packet, you can see there's several attachments, so I might reference a couple of these as we go through, but just wanted to provide a little bit of background on the existing conditions analysis that was done for this transit study. And so essentially I'll just sort of walk through some of the key takeaways from that in the next couple slides here. But so one of the existing conditions analyses that we saw, and this is not super groundbreaking or anything, but we see that the typical commuter is they drive alone to work. So you can see the bar chart here, driving alone is the typical commuter. That being said, there's also a fair amount of folks who work from home. It's actually higher than I anticipated. Beyond that, there's actually a lot of folks who are getting to work by other means that we kind of call alternative transportation modes, if you will. So taking transit, carpooling, and walking are some of the higher ones. But as you can sort of see from this chart, there's a decent amount of people who are taking transit, are getting to work via other modes. There's also a lot of folks who are working from home. So we have a pretty good mix of how people are getting around in the area. Commuting trips tend to be the most, the highest frequency of types of trips on any given day. So that's sort of why I was showing you this graph. Talking a little bit about the transit network, I'm just sort of laying more foundation for our discussion today. The existing transit network that we have today, we have 9 routes that serve Issaquah. 3 of them, the 269, the 271, and the 554. These all run all day, providing frequent service, meaning that buses come every 30 minutes or so. We have 5 routes that only run on weekdays during the peak commute hour. And we have 1 route, which is the 208, and that runs all day, but headways are about 2 hours. That one goes out to like North Bend. So these are some of the services that are provided. In addition, there's also the Trailhead Connect, which is, operates seasonally on weekends, takes you to some hiking trails. There's also paratransit and specialized transportation services that are offered by some providers in the area. More sort of foundational information. Another insight that we gathered from our analysis is related to transit access. So this chart here and this map sort of talk about what I'm about to explain. And so just to provide a little bit of background, several studies in the last 40 years have identified that transit riders are typically willing to walk about a quarter mile to access a bus stop, or about a half mile to access high quality transit services like light rail and like bus rapid transit. As we sort of think about willingness to bike to transit, that distance is about a mile. So people are willing to bike about a mile to get to transit. And drivers are willing to drive about 2.5 miles to access transit. So keeping this in mind, these distances can be used sort of as proxies for measuring accessibility to transit. These are well-established numbers that are used by transportation planners, by academics, by traffic engineers. These are sort of the gold standard, if you will, of like how accessibility is considered in one metric. So using these as a proxy, we can see in this chart here about 17% of households are within walking distance of transit, and that's currently, and about 19% of jobs are within walking distance of transit. Other things, just to, again, provide more foundational information. As we consider where people are going currently, we found that over 50% of trips in Issaquah are within the city, so intracity trips. After that, it's primarily other east side cities like Bellevue, and then northern east side cities such as Sammamish, Redmond, etc. So big picture, most of the trips are happening within Issaquah, and then many trips are happening on the east side, and then less of a percentage is happening outside of that. But that's sort of the big takeaway. When considering public transit, currently public transit can take significantly longer than driving. It's sort of, I think, kind of a truism here, but just wanted to reaffirm this for everybody. Taking public transit can take significantly longer than driving. However, and you can sort of see this in this chart, it's like the lighter yellow. There are certain destinations where taking transit actually is pretty competitive with driving. So that's something that's pretty exciting to see here.
You have one question.
Sure thing.
Quick question on the total trips that are taken within the city of Issaquah, the bus trips between Issaquah and outside cities. Does that also include the morning weekday commutes to Bellevue and Seattle?
Correct. Yeah. And so the trips that I was referring to are more like outside of bus trips. It's just everywhere where everybody is going. Origins and destinations within Issaquah, or from other places like where they're coming from to get to work in the morning. Yeah.
Thanks.
Great. Any other questions? Great. Okay. Yeah. So just to reiterate, taking public transit can take significantly longer than driving. However, we do see that taking the bus in certain destinations in Issaquah is actually very competitive with driving. So that's good to see. That's what we want to see with transit service. And so it's really about narrowing that gap to make sure that riding the bus can actually be a viable option. Most people aren't going to be super interested in taking the bus if they have other choices, and if driving is going to be significantly faster. So we just want to see improvements in that area, but it's good to see that that is possible. We are seeing it, and it's reaffirming. It's good. So as we sort of look towards the future, the city is really anticipating most of the growth to be happening in central Issaquah. That's by 2050. We're anticipating 78% of our growth in households and 64% of our growth in jobs to happen in one neighborhood. And again, as we sort of look through to see like the travel patterns, we also think that intracity trips will be the majority of trips, just like it is today. And again, between Bellevue and East Side cities, we anticipate those will be sort of the secondary and tertiary majority of trips. So as we look in the next couple months, and this is in your packet, there's more information provided in there in the memo and the packet as well. So as we look towards the near term, on May 11th, Metro actually just announced that they'll be cutting service to 3 of our 9 routes in Issaquah. And these routes are the 214, the 216, and the 217. And this was sort of late breaking as I was writing this memo. So feel free to ask questions if I can answer them. But essentially, it was explained to us that the routes will be suspended to ensure that that Metro can reliably deliver services that have been impacted by labor shortages and other staffing issues. And so, as we look at it sort of at a 50,000 foot level, while we don't want to see our services being cut, the current ridership in Issaquah for these specific routes is low. And there are still alternative transit services provided. So there's that. These cuts were announced, and since the announcement, Metro has been doing a pretty good job communicating with city staff on these changes. And in order to sort of help them amplify their voice, make sure that residents are communicated with, any existing riders will know about these service changes. And so the city's communications team plans to work directly with Metro to make sure that these upcoming changes will be communicated. Some of the things that are planned to do, they're going to be posting notices on the existing buses, on the poles for the bus stops. There's also some other city communications channels that we'll be using in the lead up. And again, I think these service changes are expected to be like September. I think it's September 2nd. So it's really kind of coming up quick, but the city will be doing what we can to communicate that with riders.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, it's okay. When Metro told the city about the cuts, did they give any details about like the demographics of, I know ridership's low, but like who are those riders currently? Like, I'm just coming at this from an equity angle of, I guess, who is losing out on those services?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a great question. Unfortunately, that data was not provided through the transit study that we've been doing. I think we've identified that I think it's of the 3 routes, I think it's like 6, 7, and 9 riders in Issaquah per day on each route. So it is a small number of folks who will be affected in Issaquah. But to your point, this route spans more than just Issaquah. So there's other riders that are riding it. And I think John showed the numbers to me a couple weeks ago, system-wide for each route, and I think it was like 400 riders on each. So it is a significant change if we look regionally. These routes, they connect from Seattle, so there's Seattle riders too that are being affected. It's not just Issaquah being affected. So it is super unfortunate. Like, we certainly don't want to see routes being cut. We love our buses. But again, there are parallel routes that are offered. So we do think that on the whole, at least in the short term, I think we'll be fine. And there are some alternatives being provided in the interim.
Question, I think these are all peak hour routes, like the 214 was the one I took into Seattle, and that was.
Yep.
54 is basically the same route, although the 214 was a direct from here to Seattle with no stops, which was great. Pre-COVID, it was packed, and post-COVID, it wouldn't be. So the 214 or the 554 kind of supplements that. I think part of your question too is it was pretty much Issaquah to Seattle and direct. Plus the 14 and the 16, also in the 17, I'm not sure. But yeah.
Yeah, Tom's definitely correct. It is peak hours, so it is only offered during the commute times. I think AM and PM commute times. So yeah, definitely unfortunate. But I think overall the more the more prime buses that are offered all day, those are still being provided. So if we sort of look at it in that way, I think we're still okay, but certainly don't want to see cuts to our bus system. Any other comments, or should I keep cruising through?
Carry on. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so, and yeah, just to sort of reiterate what I was just talking about. So the 3 routes that are gonna be going away in September, those were actually already slated to be consolidated as part of Metro's new Eastlink Connections project. And so this project, it's about implementing bus changes as light rail comes to connect Redmond, between Seattle and Redmond. So these changes are essentially coming earlier than the light rail coming. But so I guess, between light rail coming in 2025 for Eastlink connections, there will be reduced service. But again, these 3 routes were expected to be consolidated anyways. And yeah, so in the interim, Eastlink connections will be coming, and we hope to receive overall better service. There will be consolidations, and with those consolidations, we're told that the span of day, the time that buses are provided throughout the day, will be a little bit longer for certain buses. The headways between buses will be shorter, so buses will be coming sooner on many routes. And there'll be some adjustments to the routing, but overall we're very pleased with Eastlink connections. We're expecting it to be better service in the future. And as we look even further out towards 2041, 2044, somewhere around that time period, the plan is to bring Link Light Rail to Issaquah with the 4-line, the South Kirkland Issaquah line. And again, this would connect Kirkland, Bellevue, Issaquah. It would also allow for transfers to 3 Stride bus rapid transit lines and the 2-line that connects Everett and Redmond. Still providing a little bit more foundational knowledge here for our discussion today. And I do thank you for bearing with me here. So to support the future transit network, we are expecting that, and this sort of goes back, and I'll click through a couple slides. Sort of looking at central Issaquah, this is where we expect most of the growth happening, right? And so the expectation is that as central Issaquah grows, as our community grows between now and 2050, the expectation is that the majority of residents and the majority of jobs in Issaquah will be within walking distance of transit by 2050. So that's very exciting to see. We also anticipate that the majority of households and jobs will continue to be within an adequate biking and driving distance. So there should be many ways to get to transit by 2050. So that's really exciting to see. And yeah, so that's sort of foundational knowledge where we're at now, where we plan to be in the future. And now I'm going to talk about the gaps that we've identified as we sort of think about what the transit network could look like. So the first gap that we see is for bus stops. And just to reiterate a previous point that I had made, so the city doesn't provide transit service. That's through Metro and Sound Transit. But there are some things that the city can do to improve transit service provided by our agency partners. And so one of the current gaps that we've identified is really just related to providing basic amenities at bus stops. Amenities are really making sure that it's comfortable to wait for your bus. It's you feel you're protected from the elements. There's a place to sit down if you need that. Just basic things so that it's comfortable and it's a dignified way to sort of wait for your bus. So that's one of the current gaps that we've identified. And to speak very generally on the matter, so these amenities are typically provided by Metro. And Metro has justification criteria to provide these amenities. And the first initial criteria, and I'll just sort of talk about a transit shelter, for example. So as you can see here, this is one of the bus stops that I actually take in to get to work. This is where the 554 meets, and that is there's no transit shelter, even though this is a well-ridden bus route. So one of the things that Metro sees here is that, yes, like this, there's a lot of people that take this bus. However, there's actually a huge backlog on the amount of bus stops that would be worthy of receiving a bus stop. And so Metro uses a criteria: if there's at least 25 riders, it is basically a candidate to receive a bus shelter. And so system-wide, there's about 375 bus stops that qualify for a Metro-provided bus shelter. However, Metro only has the funds to provide about 25 shelters per year. So do the math, it would take a long time to serve every bus shelter that could be worthy of receiving a bus shelter. So in order to get...
We have one question.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Do we have any idea in Issaquah how many bus stops are not sheltered? And then of those, what are the portion that meet the criteria but just, have been prioritized enough?
Yeah, Micah, that's a great question, and we don't have that information yet. We're in the super preliminary understanding, but that is something that we would like to know. Yeah, that is something that we will look into, definitely. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. And so, yeah, just like looking at where Issaquah is, it's expected that if we were to serve all the bus stops that could definitely use a shelter, it could take a while. Some of the ways that Metro prioritizes where bus stops would receive a shelter include demographics, equity, access to community services, and other sorts of considerations. So that's just to say there's a huge need for basic amenities at bus stops throughout the region. And so one of the considerations that I am posing to the tab is, considering that at bus stops, there's so many needs, from, a shelter to other things like maybe lighting or like trash cans or maybe a place to sit. Should the city consider alternative means of providing bus stop amenities for what I'll call local high priority stops? So whatever that means, if we could develop some criteria, if that makes sense. If Metro has determined that improvements are not justifiable, either by ridership numbers or other conditions, or if it's just a low priority to Metro based on their criteria. So I'll pause here and maybe receive your feedback on this question.
So Thomas, just to make sure I understand, so now you're asking for us to give feedback on this particular issue. You're not, I was thinking you'd run all through them and then we'd come back to them, but now we're going to do that now, right?
I can do either. I do have the slide at this.
I didn't want to hold off. So it looks like Julian has his hand up, and I also have some questions, and Micah has his hand up. So let's go Julian, then Micah.
I mean, this is just going to be a comment on this particularly policy question. I think it's clear that if we have more comfortable spaces for bus riders, especially that particular stop on Sunset, if you're waiting for someone to pick you up or something like that, creating more comfort is obviously the answer. And so I think the city should be considering these alternative means of providing additional amenities at these stops. And then I would also add, just in general, just the closer it is to, I know like Northwest Sammamish Road, for example, those bus stops really do not have any amenities, but they also don't have that much ridership. So yes, we can develop some criteria about it, but I do think that these local routes do need some more amenities.
I can.
Yeah, so a couple things on this. I think in general, I think it seems like a good idea to provide some way of doing this. I wouldn't necessarily question Metro on their criteria for what's justifiable. I would look at just what didn't meet the priority, because there's certainly good reason why they made those decisions about justifiable, and also, we don't have unlimited budget either. And so, I'd probably look at where you have high enough ridership to make it worth it, right? You're not gonna first build shelter for, the bus stop with only a few people that take it. And maybe even look at the frequency and bus stops where you have a good number of people and a lower frequency of buses, people are waiting longer. That matters more. I also think this would be a amazing community service thing to do, because it would also draw people to be like, oh, there's a bus stop here, right? There's this community event to go build a shelter or something. So I don't know how the city would go about organizing that, maybe providing tools or something to make it a little easier for people to come and help, but I think that'd be a cool way to handle that.
Go ahead, Tom.
And Tom here, and my question is, part of what we're thinking about is worth city funds to build something where King County can't? Is it worth our funds to build shelters in certain areas that may have a high return on investment for shelter, where it's going to serve a lot of people? That the question that we're trying to answer, or say, yes, we do believe that we should do it. I'm not sure where, I think that's part of the question, but I'm not sure where we're supposed to provide input as far as saying, yeah, you provide funds for 10 if King County can't do it, for example.
I think that we're being asked to whether this is something that should be considered, but we don't have all the trade-offs, right? So is that maybe kind of what you're wrestling with a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's if King County can't within their budget and their pace, or do we have shelters that we feel it's worth the city's investment to build shelters or enhancements? And a certain number of bus stops in the city. We can't do them all, but we do maybe the high priority ones. And so we would say, yes, it's worth developing criteria and process for deciding which ones to get a shelter and funding those.
Go ahead, Erica.
So I also say, I guess broadly, yes, because this just seems odd to me. That's a yes or no question when I
Yeah.
want to put these criteria on it, because if we're using city dollars to build out shelters and amenities, then my priority would be for those kind of inner city trips that are happening. But I don't know if those are the ones that need it. I don't know if those already have shelters built, but it just seems, I don't normally like this, but it seems, if we're building a bus shelter that's servicing folks, not calling Issaquah home, I'm almost less inclined to, I guess, bring that as a priority.
Yeah, sort of the flow with this one. Yeah.
Right, but if it's inner city trips, then, and we have bus stops that need the trash cans or shelters, etc. To me, that should be a criteria. For this. Maybe that's not the way.
So that's interesting. So it sounds like what you're saying is you would yes, and you would prioritize intra-city trips to take care of our own.
Yeah, no, it's later.
Yeah.
I think I would agree, but I put a little bit of a different spin on it. I would say prioritize, in my opinion, my opinion, prioritize where residents of Issaquah, what bus stops they use, not just the ridership, because if the bus stop, the people that live here, the ones that are using, the ones that go to Bellevue, right? I might prioritize that over if it turns out that the bus trips that are within the city are actually mostly people that are, I don't know, coming here to go to restaurants or something. I would just, I get what you're saying, right? It's, if Issaquah taxes are paying for it, right, it should be prioritized towards residents of Issaquah.
Whichever stops serve more as residents.
Exactly.
Whether the inner city or another place, but they serve it as residents.
Go ahead, Neil.
Probably the same.
I've seen in different parts of the world where they were trying to fund the stations. If we're talking about the funding, and they get support of local businesses where they announce their names, the stations by the name of the business. It's like a way to advertise. It's a mutual benefit. So that's very common. You have the station in the name of a certain business or a certain company to support the city funding.
Yeah, so I wanted to say a couple things to answer the question myself. One is, should the city consider alternative means? Consider, for sure. It seems like a good idea. I think we're all very interested in kind of the next level, which is what would our criteria be? And also what I would want to know a lot about before investing is I'd want to know, I think to go up a level, we all benefit as commuters in any mode when more people are riding transit. You're driving your car, that's one less person on the road, that sort of thing. So if we are so there's sort of couple ways to look at this, like what are the objectives? If one of the objectives is to increase ridership, because that benefits everybody, then if it increases ridership, then that seems like a good idea. And there could be some sort of even conceptual cost benefit of that or a justification. Then there's just the idea of giving residents of Issaquah some amenities, whether they increase ridership or not. We have parks, we have lots of things that people like, and that's what people expect from their city. So I think we'd need to get real clear on what not just the criteria, but like, what are we solving for? And then the other thing is I would like to know if there are ways, like a thing that popped in my head, and I'm not trying to suggest tactics, but like the idea, are there other creative ways to get these things paid for? I've thought Boy Scouts, and maybe those things are just entirely unfeasible, but Hanny mentioned sponsorship, and I would imagine Metro has some pretty clear rules, and maybe that wouldn't be allowed, but I still think the idea of finding kind of a low budget, big bang for the buck ways to increase comfort of our people that use, the commuting public. Erica, did you have your hand up?
I did. My original reason for having it up just flew out of my head, but I was going to say if Metro can't help with the cost, and that's why we're here answering this question, but I'm wondering if like a floriculture grant, or when it comes to kind of artwork to make it, or like there are other options for that. I don't know how helpful that is structure wise, but we'll try and think of that.
And that reminds me of the thing I forgot to add on my comment, which is I'd want to know more about where we fall in line, because we just all agree that we would take the highest priority stops, but what if they're the closest to getting funded by Metro? Would we formulate some sort of list that we think within 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, whatever we think is an acceptable year, that those are likely to that make their way up the queue? And they might be the most attractive ones that have the best chance of getting their way through the queue. And then maybe we would focus on the next level. So I think go ahead.
I guess I'm going to ask the transit planners and engineers, because I don't know this, is this a case of if you build it, they will come? Like, what is the connection of, like, is there like proven it's a thing where if you put a shelter or a trash can by a bus stop, ridership increases? Because I just don't know that. So then I guess my answer honestly would be no for this if it doesn't really increase ridership.
So I can answer part of that. For a trash can, no. But if someone feels protected from the elements and it's more attractive to them to use, then they will come and
Okay.
will use it.
Okay.
And to your question, your comment is if say if we say this is our priority, but Metro's got it in 2 years. So if we build it now, maybe Metro can take that 2 year and build one of the other ones if they'd like.
I'm afraid they're gonna go build one in Kirkland instead, though. As long as, do you know what I'm saying? Like, because they must have their entire list of priorities, or maybe they have them by city, I don't know.
You work for Metro?
I do actually.
Oh, I was wondering if you were.
I don't work in the like transit route facilities who like actually manage and like improve the bus stops, so I'm not really an expert in this area, but like I think the things you're hearing are consistent with what I know, which is like there is a list, but I don't really have it. I haven't looked at it recently. So I couldn't really say like how it ranks. But a lot of it does have to do with like how many people are at a stop. And I think it's a decent number of people. It's not like 10, it's like 25 or even more than that, I think. So, yeah, I would just like take a look at what those criteria are and like look at where people are like most heavily using like particular bus stops. And I do again know that we will do partnerships with folks where like, if the city's interested in investing in bus stops, we can like figure out what our criteria are for like partnering together to like make improvements. So
Cost share.
yeah, and we do that for like speed and reliability improvements too, to like make buses go faster and yeah, so I'm taking some notes here and I will try to follow up on a couple of these things, like especially partnering and like criteria and what the outlook is here in Issaquah.
Like if the city committed to splitting the cost, would that suddenly jettison like our stops up the list? Or
That's the part I don't know, so I don't want to speak out of turn. I'll have to look at how we assess that.
So I'm curious if we boil this down to the simplest answer being yes, does everyone agree yes? Or I heard Erica saying that only if it increases ridership, which we seem to believe it does, and we don't know how much, or maybe somebody does. But I guess my question to us is that, are we all saying yes in the simplest form? And then we can get to the color commentary in a moment. Is there anyone that doesn't think the answer to this question is yes? Because it's really just saying, should the city consider? Julian, are you still? Yeah, and he already said yes, so. So the first answer is yes. The second answer is we have some questions. We're interested in some of these details. We're interested in cost benefit. We're interested in making sure that we don't, would everyone agree? I was the one that mentioned it, but lots of nods when our guest
Oh, I'm Brian Henry.
mentioned that cost share alternative ways as opposed to just taking on that cost. That's something we're interested in. Is that fair to say? And maybe I would ask Thomas, what else did you hear? Unless anybody else has any additional to add that we haven't covered yet. If we don't have any new thoughts, maybe you just ask Thomas what you're hearing. Is this helpful? Do you have anything to say about our comments?
These are all great comments. We're in such a preliminary stage at this point. I've heard so many good comments, and I think if this is moved forward, we'll be taking this to the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee. And if this is something that they also want to pursue, we will dig in deeper and flesh out some of these things. Some of the ways that like we could cost share could be if we're doing a capital improvement project, maybe we put in the footings for a shelter so that it's like ready to go. So we can make it easier for Metro by doing certain things, by working together with them. So we're just getting sort of at the surface level at this, but it sounds like we are interested in looking at ways to sort of make it easier, or working with other groups, other private and public groups to consider ways that we could provide amenities in some form or another. So it sounds like that's what I'm hearing, and then there's a lot of like suggestions as to how we get there. But is that sort of where we're at?
It sounds like it, yeah. I'm
Okay.
seeing some nodding. I do have, sorry, I do have a random question. I don't know if this is a ridiculous idea or not, but are we eligible to use, I mean, I don't know what the impact fees are in this city as far as the different, transportation impact fees and other ones. But is the city permitted to use impact fees for something like this?
I'm not aware of that. Yeah, unfortunately, that's something we can look into. But
Great.
yeah,
That or a lid. Improvement district type thing. If you're gonna do a couple in a certain area, then maybe a lid in that area.
Yeah.
other ways that cities can provide shelters is just by providing an awning. My apartment building here in Seattle, there's no shelter, but there's a huge awning, and that's where everybody waits to get the bus. So we just need to look outside of the box, it looks like, and there's lots of ways to get there, but it sounds like we can sort of brainstorm this, dig into it deeper, and then we can maybe consider ways to strategize, like if certain bus stops are more priority for us. But yeah, we can dig into this a little bit further.
Sounds good. I think we all know that you guys are the professionals, so we're not gonna tell you how to get these all done, but we all couldn't help ourselves with some suggestions. But I think the overall takeaway is that we can't say yes to everything, and so ways to cost share, creative ways to fund things would be, a good idea. Seems like just something, I guess it's just so concrete. It seems like there's something small, and seems like the kind of thing that you could find money for. I don't know, lots of different things. But anyway, obviously it's not our role to get into that level of detail, but I think what you're hearing is we think that there's an opportunity to be creative.
Great. Sounds good. Okay, I have two more questions, so I'm hoping we can.
We have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
We started off good, but yeah, we'll have to pick it up.
No, this is all really great. So this was a heavy hitter question. So the next one is about micromobility. And so for some of our newer members, this is a topic that was brought to the tab last year. And so just really wanted to touch very briefly on micromobility. Shared micromobility is really, like the Lime scooters, the Lime bikes, you typically access it via an app, and you can rent it by the minute, and then you can ride it around and then drop it off in designated locations outside of the sidewalk and all that. And so shared micromobility companies, they provide services throughout the region, providing for short trips, just another way to provide another transportation choice for folks. And a lot of these are battery powered, and they help people get up some of the tricky hills that we have. Could be useful in Issaquah for our hills. And so last year, again, the city looked into this possibility of potentially starting an electric scooter pilot program, but ultimately it was decided that we would not go that route. Some of the concerns that were cited were related to where the scooters are stored, how scooters are rebalanced. So like when they're moved after they're ridden, like where do they go? Concerns about where scooters are ridden, like what facilities would be capable of where a scooter could go. So these are some of the things that were mentioned, and so sort of given these concerns about micromobility, and then if Issaquah were to go there, what do you think it would take for the city to be ready to receive micromobility services?
Micah, go ahead.
Well, I'm pretty sure I was a lot of those comments last time. I think I would say that a lot of that's still true. I mean, as we've seen in other cities that have done this, I mean, I'm sure everyone here has seen I don't want to call out a specific company, but different ones of these in people's lawns, just like thrown, cast aside, blocking sidewalks for people that actually need the accessibility of the sidewalk. I've never seen someone I shouldn't say never, but I can't remember a time I've seen someone use a helmet while wearing one of these, where you go ask any emergency room doctor, they'll say that's a terrible idea. I've seen them ridden on the sidewalk and the street, just back and forth. Rarely is there, people actually choosing one or the other. I think if City of Issaquah were to do a pilot, they would need to do a geofence pilot, a very strict geofence pilot. Start with, high density where they think it's going to be actually used. And, I would expect that whatever the company is that does this will, applies the brakes and prevents the bike from being ridden outside of that geofence. And then the city sets certain standards about, if they're like, not the company's fault, but if people are leaving them and blocking sidewalks so that people that need the sidewalk can't access it, then that's just not going to work. So I think it would take that. And I also, would probably like to see the city enforce penalties for stealing these as well in that pilot, because we don't want it just to be more, say trash around the city, as I've seen Redmond, seen in Seattle, I've seen around here.
Erica and then Tom.
And Julie.
Yes.
Oh.
Julian, I think, should go before me.
Okay, thank you. I can't, I should sit over there next time so I don't see the screen. Julian, go ahead.
Yeah, I hate to push back against some of the stuff. I was just in Spokane this past weekend, and they have a pretty robust system of getting around by the scooters and things like that. And I will say that there is some geofencing of those, but I was also in St. Louis last summer, or 2 summers ago, and they also have that, and the geofencing was just applicable everywhere. And so that geofencing basically made riding around with these things pretty much useless. And so I don't think, sure, we can geofence it in some places, like in the middle of Confluence Park or something, but I don't think we should be super duper strict on the geofencing that we do on this. The one thing that I will say, though, is that there's definitely some safety concerns about riding around. And so that kind of goes into our regular budgetary decisions about where we're deciding to spend our money on in transportation, and trying to build out our right-of-ways to be more friendly towards non-car mobility. And so I think that's where the focus and the discussion should be at, I feel like. And so that's where I'm at. And I think micromobility is a pretty cool way to get around town in general. In Spokane, I was using it to get from the hotel I was at into to the meeting venue in downtown Spokane, for example. And so it's just a useful way to boost that tourism, boost that local traffic as well. So I think we should be pursuing it, with some caveats.
I went in last night and watched the city council vote on this and just got really sad all over again, because I wanted the context for that, because for this, I just wanted to know, I'm like, well, why did city council think that we weren't ready? Because we had, a robust discussion about it. I was really stoked for little scooters, because I live up in the Highlands. Half the reason why I don't ride my bike down to this meeting is because I don't want to ride it all the way back up that big hill. And so I could get an e-bike, but this would be great for folks like me. Something that stuck out to me at the city council meeting was Councilman Paul saying, like, this isn't the solution for all our transit issues. I'm probably not saying that as well as he did, but it is, I guess, it's one option to solve a few different transit or transportation issues that we have. So I think I did not know that this topic was as divisive as it was. It sounds like the feedback, it was like 60% of the feedback was categorized as negative. So I guess we need a much more robust communications plan or campaign about this. I think highlighting the successes that cities have had. I know there are negatives. I lived in Seattle a couple years ago, and of Lime bike at the bottom of Lake Union is like in my brain, but I don't know. I think this could work for our city. It's not gonna solve all of our transportation issues, but yeah, if I want to hop on a bike or scooter or grab coffee with a friend, it's a lovely idea. But, I know the equity issue was highlighted for, folks, yeah, we're like, if that blocks the sidewalks, that's a huge, EDA issue. So that they mentioned this at council. I think filtering this, like another pilot through the equity board is really important in addition to.
So I see you have your hand up, but I think
I
he
have a
was,
question.
oh, yeah.
Maybe, go ahead, though.
Oh, no, if you have a question, go ahead and then I'll.
Is what the city was looking at, and maybe you know from the vote, is it about whether the city's allowing them something to operate or funding something?
It was just, the vote was just for the pilot, and the pilot is.
Who's paying for it? He would know, he
Yeah.
was the project manager.
Yeah, so my understanding was that the pilot was free. Yeah.
Free for.
City.
The city, yeah, until the council is voting of whether they allow it.
Whether or not they wanted the pilot. And that was what was so disappointing to me, because if it didn't end up working out, we could have just not done it.
So, yeah. So you answered one of my questions that because I was thinking, like, who would actually use, because we have the downtown flat area, we have the Highlands area, and so you might have the two areas, but you mentioned like right from the Highland down to here, so that answered my question that people would use it in a broader context than, especially if it's an e-bike, than just the local areas. So that would be, so that my thought was like, who would really use these? But I think you answered that people longer distance might use it, so it should be. Awesome.
Because no, that was another point that was brought up in the council meeting, and that is, I agree with, is that if we're looking at this to also solve like some first and last mile issues, where the pilot was proposed didn't necessarily seem like it was gonna cover all that. Like, I actually don't even know if I could ride an e-bike up the hill to the Highlands, so.
Aha.
We were looking at the economics of it. Since it was free, they were controlling what would be best for them.
Ah.
Bring back memories.
Yeah, I just got a little bit of flashbacks.
A follow-on question. I see Julian also has a hand.
Oh, thank you.
I just want to ask that question, if that's okay, to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. So the pilot would be free. That almost implies to me that the concept is the city would then fund part of it later.
No, it's, so with a thing like a scooter share, it's different for bike share. Bike share, it does include actual infrastructure and stuff like that. But for scooter share, usually it's just, the overhead is just the scooters. So the city can get involved in, paint parking areas for scooters,
But they're not paying to manage anything.
it's literally, it's a free market.
Allowing the free market to come in
Yeah,
and.
exactly.
Julian, go ahead, and then I want to say something. Go ahead, Julian.
Yeah, going back to that question about who would use it in that particular proposed pilot, and I still remember that map, and my home would be in that limit, and so I would definitely be a pretty frequent user of it in terms of, it takes 10 minutes usually to walk to the 554 stop for me, and so taking the electric scooter downtown would be much faster, of course, in doing that. And so, yeah, I would be one of those users. And so I think it just, fills in that last mile where it might otherwise be difficult to do that because, if we're talking about Gilman Village, we can always put a shuttle there to go to connect it to, to the town hall bus stop. But I think a lot of people might like to just take the scooter on the Rainier Trail, for example, and go all the way to the town hall that way.
You want motorized things on county city trails?
Class one. There are different classes. There are 3 different classes of scooters.
Class release.
That's a bike. That's just a e-bike.
I don't know.
Those would be allowed. But for like Lime scooter is like a class 1, I believe. It's allowed under Issaquah code. And sidewalk. Because we classify as a bicycle. We can talk about it later.
So I just want to answer this question for myself, and that say that I think it's a great question. I love this question. What would it take for the city to be ready to consider? I think it's a really salient question. I think one of them is I need to know more about the topography, and it seems like connecting Highlands with the valley floor and other, places that are topographically challenged to connect with the valley floor. But I also just want to say, I mean, I think this is inevitable. We just looked at a slide that talked about how much the growth is going to be concentrated on the valley floor. So I think that on the one hand, I feel like it's inevitable and we shouldn't stick our head in the sand. But on the other hand, I really want all these other cities to work out all of the details first and figure everything out first, because it seems fraught and divisive. And I mean, people get really pissed off about them. So I just sort of feel like I'm just kind of speaking out of both sides, like wait till it's really dialed and then plan to get it done. But I just don't think it's just such a good idea. I would have loved to have had one to get the 1.25 miles from my house here, but instead I had to ride my fancy road bike that I have the wrong shoes for. I would have loved to jump on a scooter or a line bike. So I think maybe one of the answers is time. We're just not going to be able to keep saying no forever, because I think it's a way of the future. But Micah, go ahead.
Well, knowing that the city doesn't pay for it, I'm entirely opposed to the city paying for it, because what always happens is there's only a few companies that do this. So you're essentially, it's just a little too limited, not enough. But yeah, but if this is about whether it's purely allowing a company to come in and operate, that's different for me. I still would want to see, I think I agree with you, Ty, I want to see some of the issues worked out, because drive around Seattle, you'll see what I mean. Everyone has seen it. I think that does need to be worked out. And so that's where, like, I would say geofencing, I get that limits who can use it, but we can see other parts of the issues and start to get things operating, see how that all works out. Yes, from the perspective of the usability of it, it'd be better if there was no geofence. But because not all the other issues are worked out, you start with maybe limited. And we just saw, as one of you pointed out, the majority of that growth is in that area. So that seems like the area, you already have your outline right there.
If I could jump in just for time, I'm going to redirect us a little bit for the question specifically, like the what. So we're talking about like kind of around what, but I just want to make sure that we're staying on track.
One of the other what's is time. One of the what's is addressing the concerns. What is another what? Another what is getting people.
The boundaries. What would be the boundaries?
Well,
And I think the geosite, you should be able to take it from downtown up to the Highlands. You should be able to span the whole city.
how about the what? What would it take? The what being a really strategic, highly plausible route that is then geofenced, but still has enough options for it to be a legit pilot. Does that make sense? Yeah. That
Yeah, just to reiterate, thinking about all the wrinkles in what the program could be, trying to dial those in, making sure that it's still useful, but also has like our sort of stamp on it. So it's not like a big city program, but it has more of like our intentions like built into it. So I guess just like in general, just more ironed out, and just like thinking about ways that we can learn from how other cities have done it and what we don't like about that, and see if we can try to fix on that.
Do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I'm just confirming that it's taking the experience of other cities to give us the conclusion for that.
Okay, well, as Mr. Larson friend pointed out, we probably should move along. We're not terrible yet, but we're starting to run out of time. I know we have one more big question. So I
can
think
just
we should move along unless you have any questions about where hopefully we gave you coherent enough feedback.
Yep, definitely. And I'm going to zoom through the next couple slides. If you've read the packet, you may know some of this already, but if you haven't, I'll just briefly touch on this. And so what Brian from Metro, who's going to be presenting after me, he was just sort of alluding to transit speed and reliability projects that some cities can do to make strategic improvements to the transit service that we do have. So I'm just going to talk about some examples of what that may look like. And so some of the strategic investments that the city could make to improve transit along our network could be to reduce transit delays, improve the reliability of transit so that the bus comes, when it should be based on the timetable, and just generally reducing transit times so that as we think about that map where like some routes are more competitive with driving than others, if we can reduce travel times, we can make riding the bus a more viable option for our community. And so some of the examples that people may know about in this room, but it's possible that you don't. One example is a business access and transit lane, or a BAT lane. These are used in many contexts. So like in this example, this is more downtown sort of treatment, but we also have it along SR 900. You may have seen it's like a carpool lane and also used for buses. So that's sort of another example. There's also a bus signal that sort of works with that. So buses are able to use that to get some priority treatments. These lanes typically allow for like right turning vehicles to access businesses. Sometimes bikes can ride through them depending on the context. So this is just one example of a priority treatment that really does help buses. And in order to, before we would consider doing any of these things, we would want to model the effects of providing an improvement, making sure that we can mitigate any potential impacts that would occur. And another example is a queue jump. This is very common in the region. It essentially provides buses a head start at intersections that are signalized. This graphic on the right sort of describes what it is. So you board your bus, the bus gets the green before everybody else on that leg of the intersection, and then the bus can jump ahead, so jumps the queue. That's just another example. This can be used in conjunction with, a business access transit lane, or like whatever, BAT lane. And yeah, I mean, these can be sort of joined together, and any potential improvements, we'd want to like make sure that we take a holistic view at it, making sure that we're not making significant impacts on another mode, but that's sort of another option that's available. And I'm just going to try to advance this slide here. And the third option, which again can be used with the other types. This is TSP. You may have heard of it when the tab was looking at the ITS plan last year. Transit priority treatments for TSP. It's basically, so like if you look at number 1, 2, and 3, so the bus is approaching an intersection, it sends a signal to 3, which is like hardware at the intersection. And then the intersection can provide more green time for the bus to get through the intersection. So it really just dynamically can change the timing of the intersection to make sure that the bus can get through, and it can significantly reduce the travel time on the bus, making it more competitive with driving and all that. So yeah, these are just 3 examples of priority treatments that the city can do in order to strategically use our funds to improve the transit that we have today. And it really just sort of makes the whole transit network that much better, and it's something that we can do sort of alongside Metro or Sound Transit. And it's, yeah. So yeah, and again, like these, any solution that we would consider would be sort of tailored to the approach, making sure that it's a good, cost benefit. And so the policy question for the tab, and thank you for bearing with me as I provided that information. So where meaningful improvements can be made to make enhanced speed and or reliability of high quality transit service, should the city be considering the strategic use of priority treatments near signalized intersections?
I'm gonna go first this time. I haven't gone first yet. Definitely. I think that all these things make a heck of a lot of sense, and I don't know how they would get implemented exactly, but I know that we have made a decision to invest in ITS, and it seems like ITS and TSP go hand in hand. And that seems like really low hanging fruit to me. For the future, to be able to accommodate all the growth. We're not gonna be able to drive, not everyone's gonna be able to drive through here, and we have to increase the competitiveness, I think, of the buses in order to get there. So that's what I think. And Micah had his hand up and Julian had his hand up, but I think Micah was first.
So I would say if it requires the reduction in travel lanes that were otherwise determined the appropriate amount of lanes, then I would say no. Because I don't think that we should be, just for the purpose of allowing a bus to be able to shortcut an intersection, reduce travel lanes that further will make traffic worse, slow down drivers. We shouldn't be encouraging people to use buses just by punishing drivers, right? So it's like a yes. I would say yes, I agree, but it's all in the how it's actually done. And I think just looking at these graphics, it either looks like you're taking a lane away, taking parking away in a likely an area where there's not a lot of parking to begin with, and street parking is often the only option, or you're going to be building an additional lane, which can be quite expensive. So, all of those things are very troubling to me. But if there's a way around that, then absolutely, it sounds awesome.
I think Julian, and then we'll go Tom. Julian, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say yes to all of these, I believe 3 items that you showed in terms of the transit priority lanes and all of that. Just because, the fact of the matter is, as we go into the future, and as we try to get the light rail line over here, the fact of the matter is that we were going to have to prioritize movement of people, and that only comes with the bus lane treatments and things like that. And so I would say that we should go full forward on these things to promote the high quality transit service that we need going into the future, and to try to reduce that congestion that we have in the city. Because like I said, we're becoming more urban. There's no way to stop it, right? And so we should be trying to promote the movement of people now. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just for those that may not know, I was just going to point out a good example is coming up I-90. There is a bus lane that goes up to the intersection, makes a right turn, then there's also a Q jump right at the intersection of Gilman Boulevard. Or an example of what a bus lane, or it's not a bus lane, it's actually a bus lane. And then the Q jump right at Gilman Boulevard. That comes in quite handy when the traffic's backed up at Avenue coming through to get the bus back to the transit center, where they can have their Q jump through the intersection, be able to move over all the lanes, and then make a left turn into the intersection. So that's a good example for people who want to see one in action. And I'd say yes, it's a good thing, and I would say it's a good thing to prioritize and look where we can provide these elsewhere.
think it falls in line with the planning for growth aspect of the MMP. Yeah, if we're anticipating this growth in both jobs and households, then I don't want to carve each for each person living in here because I don't think that will just break the city and our streets. If we can get faster transit service, that to me, more than bus shelters, like for me personally, is yeah, transit is faster. I'm going to use that more. I can stand out in the rain or not have a trash can, but if the bus takes super fast time to get through town.
Bring your own umbrella.
Yeah.
Annie, did you have anything?
Yeah, it's such projects, I think they will have some like consequences during construction.
Oh.
Yeah, so that should be studied also, because what I've noticed that the streets in Issaquah are not that wide. Yeah, so taking off a lane or working on a lane from 2 or 3 lanes, that's half or third of the capacity. So plus the time, plus the disturbance. So that should be considered, I believe, prior to taking that.
I want to circle back and just say that after listening to Micah, I want to just reiterate that, I wasn't super clear. I do think that we should start with the lowest hanging fruit, and I don't think we should start by punishing cars. And I think that, if you think 30 years from now, 20 years from now, it's a lot different. But if you're talking about short-term CIP, TIP, I like the idea of starting, and I don't know what exists, so there's probably existing things, but I mean, the priority, without, so the ITS based thing seems like the low hanging fruit to me before a lot of investment is made in, modifying our skinny little streets here. So. All right, well, I think we answered that question pretty clearly. Anybody have anything to add? Not seeing Julian. Okay, good. All right. Well, these are good questions, and I think it's a good. We had a good discussion. Be able to dig into some of these policy issues. Hopefully, we provided some good feedback for you guys. I don't remember where we are. Is that the end of the presentation? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the end. Yeah, I appreciate your time. Got a whole lot of great feedback on these 3 questions. So, moving forward, I'll be taking this to Mobility and Infrastructure Committee next month. So we'll be sure to provide your feedback to them as well so that they can make a decision on this.
That's great. I want to remind you and John that we had made a decision that we would have a chance to review that before it goes there. And Julian and I are on point to make quick turnarounds so that it doesn't hold up your process. But I just want us to exercise that muscle. And then if there's anybody, I have a standing commitment on Tuesday evenings. I have 2. But I do think it's nice if anybody wants to attend, and that Mobility Infrastructure Committee is the second Tuesday of every month. So maybe give us an opportunity maybe to send that around if anybody wants to go. I think it's really useful to hear the discussion at the M&I committee and what interest they take in our feedback, as well as like different points of view, and then being able to understand where they're coming from, I think is helpful for us. So I think it's nice. So maybe send us a note so we can, to remind us when that happens, and give us an opportunity to send a representative, if you don't mind. And we are really close to being on time. Thomas, do you have anything else?
That's it. Yeah, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you. That was good. That was great. I think that that brings us then to, we're only 3 minutes behind in the schedule.
4.
4. Oh, sorry. Okay. That brings us to item 4C, which is a MetroFlex introduction. And I'm not sure if you want to take it away, John. Mr. Brian Henry here. Thank you for coming.
Oh, yeah, thank you. It's great to be here. Great to see everyone.
So I'll kick us off. So I'm here to, well, we're both here to chat about possible partnership with Metro for the Metroplex on demand service. Myself and Brian here will be presenting some information to you tonight. So we have this conversation divided into two pieces. This month, we'll kind of give just kind of a quick 20-minute introduction is what is scheduled. And then next month, we'll be able to dive in probably for an entire hour or so and have a really robust discussion around this. So today will be two pieces. Brian is going to provide an introduction of the service to you all. And then I also at the end have a little bit of an overview transit survey that we conducted in the Tallis, Issaquah, and Old Town neighborhoods. And then if we aren't at 7:50, then we'll have time for some Q&A if there are questions. But if not, if we get to 7:50 and we need to move on, I would ask that you write those questions down so we can discuss them next time. So with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. All right. I'll try to get through it quick so we can have some good conversation. So just to introduce myself, I'm Brian Henry, and I work in Metro's the service planning group. And so I'm the team lead for the east part of King County. And so we look not just at kind of these kind of flexible services, but also like the fixed route planning and fixed route service. And yeah, so I'm definitely around here and try to keep track of what's going on. So it's great to see everyone. So next slide here is just kind of what we're going to go over. I think John said it best. We're really here just to kind of let you know what this is all about, help understand, take questions about how it works. And it's just a great opportunity to be working with John and others at the city. John kind of came to us and was like asking about on demand and was kind of like working on it and thinking like, oh, I'm doing research on this. Like, what do you all do? And then we kind of told him what we've been doing, and we kind of led to this opportunity to talk more about this. So I think the next step here is just kind of let you all know about it tonight, ask some questions, and then we can go from there. So first, I just want to, on this next slide, kind of go over the idea that, oh, do you want to do anything for next? Yeah.
There we go.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, just to look like we have been doing a lot of piloting of different kinds of services over the years. And this just kind of gives a little bit of that background. For almost 10 years, just working with communities, like learning about different ways that we can approach providing mobility for folks. And that's really kind of consistent with Metro's overall philosophy, which is to be a mobility agency and to look at meeting different kinds of needs in different ways. So we have like a whole suite of different ways that people can use our services, from like really rapid buses to like van pool programs. And then we'll talk about Metroflex tonight. But we definitely are always looking to try something new, especially if we can address a need in the community. All right, so the role of on-demand services. This just kind of talks a little bit about like, how does this work? On-demand is typically sort of like where you can need a ride and aim to go somewhere, and typically can use an app or make a phone call to like schedule a ride to come pick you up. So there's a lot of different versions of this. In some ways, our paratransit is a version of this. Folks who can't use the regular bus, they make an appointment, they go from point to point. But with technology, we've really been able to innovate how we get around, and that's really what this is all about. We have also been updating our policies. In 2021, Metro updated its strategic plan, our Metro Connects long range plan, and our service guidelines. And it kind of reaffirmed the support for like these type of innovative approaches. But it also helped us like look at how we can provide more guidance on developing these services and evaluating them. So we look at things like density, access to jobs and assets, partnerships, geographic barriers, places where there's like not great pedestrian infrastructure. So those are all things that can help us look for this as an opportunity for this kind of service. So I mentioned a couple of things that we look at for like prioritizing like where these kind of services work. But our service guidelines also talk about how we evaluate these services. So I just wanted to kind of share, like, what do we look at, like, when we're seeing how they're performing? And these are the three main things. So are we serving priority populations in King County? Are we being efficient with taxpayer dollars? So like, how much does it cost per rider to provide a trip like this? And then are we being productive? Like, so are we carrying a lot of people for every hour the vehicle's out there? Which is also kind of a sustainability measure as well. Like the more people you carry, the less emissions per mile, so per person. But we also have a lot of other indicators that we look at for how the service is working. So whether or not, you know, we're overwhelmed by demand, we need to adjust. So like making sure seats are available, managing our wait time so people don't have to wait too long, a whole range of things.
So what's PMT and VMT?
That's like passenger miles traveled versus vehicle miles traveled. So it's kind of that productivity thing. So if you're carrying people many miles, but the vehicle, like, in other words, if 5 people are in the vehicle for a mile, then that's pretty efficient because you've done 5 person miles for 1 vehicle mile. So that's like less emissions from the car.
The ratio between person miles and vehicle miles. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's a little, yeah, well, maybe we'll have to change the wording on that one. Thanks for that. So now I'll talk about MetroFlex. So MetroFlex is our on-demand service, or sometimes it's called microtransit. Yeah.
What's the average cost per rider for a bus compared to the cost per rider for Metroplex?
It's definitely higher for MetroFlex or for an on-demand service typically than buses. It depends on where the buses are. You know, like some bus routes are more efficient than others. But I would say in general, and it also depends on how efficient like the microtransit or the on-demand service is. So, you know, Metro services like can range from like $5 to $10 per ride. I would want to come back and like confirm that, but it's like,
yeah, I'm not looking for a specific number. I'm just trying to get an understanding of like whether this is same order of magnitude, just different cost, or we're talking like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think like in a denser area, it gets down to like for the like MetroFlex, it's, you know, like $10 to $12 an hour, but it can go up to like 30 something dollars an hour in like less dense areas where there's less demand. So it's really a range. Yeah, but this, before you go on, like this is really kind of like what it's all about. So you use an app, there's also a call center, there's translation for folks. We have the app in different languages. We aim to have about 15 minutes of wait time, and we call it like corner to corner. So there's a little bit of a walk distance to get to a pickup point, which makes it a little more efficient. And yeah, so that's kind of the overview. You can pay with many of this. You cannot pay with cash, unfortunately, but you can use a lot of Metro's other payment methods, like so Ticket Go Transit. Yeah, let's go ahead. So these are the MetroFlex areas that we have in King County right now. And you can see just a little quick profile on like the service hours and days, like when do we provide it and on what days. So this is something that we've been piloting in different places. Recently, we consolidated all of our on-demand services into like a single brand and a single operator and a single app to make it more consistent for everyone and a lot more efficient. So you may be familiar with Community Ride was the Samander service that was on demand, and now that's just part of this overall MetroFlex brand. And then this is just to show you really quickly kind of what does it look like? How does the app look? How do you do it? You know, it's pretty typical of like how we use a lot of our apps. We download the app and then you kind of select where you want to go and it gives you different options. Notably, it gives you bus options too, just in case that's of interest to you, or, you know, like you need another option if like there's a longer wait time than you might like. And then, yeah, your driver comes and picks you up. So pretty basic way that these type of things work. And then on the next slide, this shows like kind of a new feature that we're testing with MetroFlex right now, where we are integrating with fixed routes. So like if the bus is really convenient and really fast, we want people to use the bus because that's just efficient and someone else can use the MetroFlex. So the app actually like points you to a bus if it's going to be like the same amount of waiting time and the same amount of like no transfers or anything. So if you're standing right next to a really frequent bus stop, the app will know if the bus is coming soon and it's going to where you want to go. So it's a pretty integrated feature to like really try to use Metroflex when it's gonna work and use the bus when that's gonna work.
Is this cheaper than doing a ride share?
You know, I don't do that much ride sharing lately, so I couldn't say, and I'm not familiar with kind of like how much ride shares are, but I know it's a lot cheaper because we're just charging a metro fare. So,
Cheaper for the person.
right.
What about for the cost?
Yeah, well, the cost overall, like a lot of our services, we kind of got into that just a minute ago with like, how much is it per ride? So we're looking at that. And like, we want to make sure we're being productive and efficient as well as, because we are subsidizing it, we're not, the fare does not pay the whole amount. But that's true of all of our services. But yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I should have noted that earlier. It's a standard metro fare, and we have accessible vehicles. We have like for wheelchairs, we have bike racks. We also have, you know, you can have like, if you're ADA and you need like, it'll take you right to where you're going. You won't have to like walk. So and we have like low reduced fare. So a lot of the options you have on a regular bus are available on Metroflex. And yeah, so I just wanted to end here to kind of like wrap around to some of the conversations we've been having with John, really, and a few other folks at the city, just to sort of start to think about like, what is this all about? And I think this kind of started with the idea that there's been a big need in the Squawk and Taos communities to like better connect down to the transit center and to some of the denser areas and services. You know, and so we were looking at how to do that. And, you know, this is kind of like a concept that we came up with just to give you an idea of like, you know, where we're at. And, you know, one thing I'll note is we didn't include all of Issaquah. We didn't include some of the neighborhoods. And the reason is that they're like a lot with anything with transit, there's a big trade-off. So if you make an area too large, it's really going to degrade service for everyone, or cost a lot more. And so we really have to balance where we're serving. And so we're really focused on the Squawk and Taos neighborhoods for this pilot. But yeah, that's where we are right now, and hopefully I didn't go too long.
Oh, great.
Question. Is it Squawk neighborhoods?
That's right.
How does it like work with the partnership for Issaquah as far as funding? Like, is it just like Issaquah's agreeing to it or Issaquah's paying for it?
The proposal would be that Issaquah would like pay for the cost of the pilot. I don't know if you want something.
That doesn't mean we should do it. I want to be.
Oh, no, yeah, we should be straightforward with that, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll probably get deeper into that next month, but yes, that is the current proposal. It's paying for a van is the current goal.
Is that how the other ones work as well?
So the other one is not a partnership. It's kind of a pilot that we had out there for a while in Sammamish. But there is an efficiency of being adjacent to the Sammamish zone, in the sense that like the vehicles can be shared so that you're benefiting from like the part that Metro's funding. Because the vehicles can share between the zones. So it's really allowing people in Issaquah to go more places, and because it would be like, you couldn't just do the service with one vehicle. It would be more expensive to launch the service if it were just an island out here. So because there's already an investment, that's part of the reason why it's an attractive place to like talk about this kind of partnership.
And, okay, you mentioned it, there's no cash. Like you can't have a cash option for paying. It's through the app or other things that Metro like must stake.
That's right, yeah. Transit Go ticket is like an option where, yeah, you can get an online ticket or use your Orca card.
Was one of the issues, like, is the aging populations in the neighborhoods that we're talking about, or not? Just wondering, like, if the technology is a barrier.
That's something we can listen to.
I don't want to pay with a broad brush.
You verify?
Yeah.
You can
I'm
call.
surprised.
We always promote the call-in option.
Oh, okay.
So you don't have to use the app, you can use the telephone.
How would you pay then? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Physical card, like the Orca card.
Great questions for next time, for sure. Okay, so really quickly, I wanted to run through the transit survey that we did. So we did a targeted survey in April. It was focused on Tallis, Squawk, Old Town, and Issaquah Valley. I think we may have talked about, no, this was pre. So we ended up getting 416 responses, which is really, really good for these neighborhoods. And 8 of them were excluded because they said, I do not live in one of these 4, but so it's more like 408 responses. And we got 9 responses in Chinese, 1 in Spanish, which is lower than I'd like, but still great that we got that feedback. And those are the numbers. So it's obviously kind of heavy in Tallis. I think it's because I called the HOA and they pushed an email out, and all of a sudden there's like this waterfall of responses, which is great, very connected community. But still got a solid amount of people from Squawk Mountain, which is generally not a very responsive neighborhood. So just
Squawk Mountain, does that mean all Squawk Mountain? Or is it?
Yeah. So first of all, we asked the question, how often did you ride transit before COVID, basically, and how much did you ride in the last 3 months? Obviously, that red never has expanded a ton. And we know that it's kind of what's happening even across the world, especially across the US. So therefore, those other categories of once a month, once a week, days, most days, it's really kind of accordioned, for lack of a better word. However, this is a really optimistic piece right here, because this is the question of if transit was located within a block of you, which Metroflex would be, how often, like, do you ride, and would you ride it? And almost 50% of respondents said, I don't use public transit right now, but I would if it were closer. Obviously, there's that 32% of do not and would not. Honestly, that's a smaller number than I expected, so that's great. And then, of course, we have the I do and would more often. And then I also wanted to share this really quickly. So this is a list of, we gave them the respondents this map of kind of where would you want to go? Like, and I think they got to choose up to 3 places, if I'm not mistaken. And the answers ended up being the most high, the highest answers were the transit center, Issaquah Commons, that's where like QFC is. Nope, that's wrong. Let's see. That would be a Trader Joe's, Target, that area, and then downtown Issaquah. The second set of responses was the state park, which is great. That's a discussion we had with Metro. State park wasn't initially a stop, and we asked them, hey, could it be a stop? And they said yes. And so we included that on the survey. It ended up being a pretty high type of access that people want. Costco, and then the Gilman Village, interestingly enough, where like Issaquah Coffee is located. And then other ones that are kind of more in the 20% responses are kind of everywhere else. Swedish, Grand Plaza, Lake Samana Center, and Meadow Shopping Center. And of course, there's that obligatory 24% said, I wouldn't go anywhere with this. So we are past 7:50, and so I don't think we have time for questions today, because we have a couple of things to go through. I want to thank Brian for coming out in person tonight. It's great to hear directly from Metro, and yeah, we've been working on this for a while. Very excited to share it with you all. So next month we will do a kind of a full hour deep dive into what the program is shaping up to be, especially over the next month. We have some more work to do, and we'll get to share what we're thinking as well. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Brian, for coming. I think we'll move along to reports, and it sounds like John has a board work plan to go through. It's, I'm guessing, a staff report.
Quick staff report to. Let's do these pretty quickly. Yes. So over the next few months, we have next month is more Metroplex. very exciting to me, and I hope to you too. And we're also going to do a tab refresher course thing where you're still working on exactly what that's going to look like. I think I have a meeting with Emily in like a week to talk about it. So I don't have specifics right now about what that's going to be, but we just want to kind of refresh you on the mobility master plan and the comp plan, just kind of these important documents.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Important documents that are central to the work that we're doing with this board. July, Thomas is going to be back. I hope you like him. Thomas is going to be back to talk about light rail planning and transit study. It's because he has some policy questions around that, because that's, if I can speak for him, that's really such a huge kind of goal that we're moving toward is, how do we reorient our everything around, getting ready for light rail. And then August is to be determined. We're not exactly sure what it's going to look like. We were looking ahead at issues that need to go before mobility and infrastructure and council in the fall months, and there's not a lot that we're aware of at the moment. So we're gonna figure out exactly what August might be. It could be a month off. We're not sure, no promises, but that is a possibility. So that's my work plan update.
Thanks for that. Do you have a staff report?
Do you have a staff report? Andrea asked me to read a statement here about capital improvement. She's here, but she's, I think, traveling, so she's listening. But she sent this statement along because we've committed to coming back to you with all of our topics to let you know how things are going. So from Andrea, City Council Subcommittee on Mobility and Infrastructure met on May 9th to discuss the capital improvement plan and transportation improvement plan. They appreciated hearing the feedback from TAB about the criteria and process to form the CIP. They spent most of the discussion on the transportation benefit district sales tax of 0.1%. They supported the tax, but are very interested in seeing what public engagement plan would be before the city council would be asked to approve the tax this fall. Committee also supports the use of these funds to build the Northwest Marist non-motorized improvement projects and intelligent transportation ITS improvements. The Mobility and Infrastructure Committee will be providing this recommendation to the full council in their committee at the whole meeting on June 12th. At that meeting, City Council will convene for the first time to discuss the entire CIP. With that, I yield to the chair report if there is.
I do not have a chair report. And we don't have a youth, so we can't have a youth report. So I do think we're down to item 6, other business and announcements. Do we have any of those?
I have a few.
Okay.
So next month, as you know, thank you for taking the doodle poll last month about when we all could meet in June due to the holiday that would have fallen on the 4th Wednesday. So we're going to be meeting on Monday, June 26th. I will update the invite, and we will not be meeting here, and I will remind you several times throughout the month. We will be meeting at the 235 First Avenue building downtown in the Steelhead Room, and you don't have to worry about remembering that. I will send it out to you. It's not council chambers. It's like adjacent to the community center.
Yeah, it's right next to it's in between the community center and the pool. And it's home, at least half of the building is home to the teen center.
Oh, I know that place.
So
I walked by there on the.
small, low slung sort of storage building.
Oh, my God, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
This is a new one for me, so I'm very excited.
Don't be too
It'll be
excited.
at 6 like normal. Yeah. So I will update the invite and the location as well. Last month, Erica, you mentioned that you were willing to attend the June Mobility and Infrastructure
I
Committee.
did. Okay, yeah.
Are you still,
Sure.
do you still want to do that?
Yeah, I have no memory of that. Yeah, why not?
I think is Thomas going to, he's not here anymore. I think maybe he's going with transit study to M&I. I need to check exactly what the topic is. Yes?
Yes.
Flex will not be because, so we are pushing the timeline. The reason why we split into two, we were gonna do this whole thing today, I think, actually, is our original timeline for rolling out Flex, if it got approved, was going to be August. It's been pushed back to October, just logistically. And so we have a little bit more time. So Flex will not be going to June. We'll be going to July, mobility infrastructure, and the council in August. That's the plan. And that concludes my other business and announcements.
Well, then, with no further ado, because nobody likes ado, I think we should adjourn. I don't know.
No, second,
No, I didn't know that until you told me that.
We gave her all the power.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Nice to have you there again.
I will stop recording.